cyberbullying, it's everywhere. It's just part of life. No matter what, you're going to be cyberbullied at some point. And it's bad just because it is everywhere. So we used to be able to go home, and home was our safe space. So yeah, we were at school for 6 or 7 hours. The kids were brutal. But as soon as we crossed that threshold, it was done. Now it's like you cross the threshold, you go to your room, open your phone, and it's non-stop. So it's just, we're living in a different world.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to episode 16 of Disrupt the Everyday. Today we'll be discussing online safety as it relates to children. And joining us for this discussion is Sherri Barna. Sherri, thanks for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And we always like to get into the heavy questions first. So we're going to ask the loaded question. Who is Sherri Barna?
Who is Sherri Barna? That's a tough one. I don't know. This is a tough one. I don't know why. Usually people don't ask about myself. I am a business owner. I own Purplebeat Media, and so my whole world is social media, which I completely love. I've loved it forever since like MySpace came out and ICQ, and since the internet was dial-up and all that, and it's been a blast. I'm a mom of 3, which is why the topic I chose today more relates to them than my business, but it's still around social media. And I've been married for probably almost 14 or 15 years. And that's it. Yeah.
I usually have to give this tip to men, but if you ever get stuck, what you say is, when you're trying to figure out the timeline that you've been married, you just say not long enough if you're not sure the exact.
Okay. Yeah, you're going to hear me say that now because I'm really bad at dates.
That's me.
Awesome. Now, actually, before we get into the topic, I want to talk a little bit about your business and Purplebeat Media specifically. How did you get into Purplebeat Media? Like, if I remember correctly, you were working in social media and marketing prior to launching your own business, but what made you kind of go in that direction?
Yeah, so I was working with a nonprofit organization and kind of worked my way through the company. And in 2012, a position for director of social media came up, and I was like, oh, now this job would be perfect for me. So I applied, I got it. And I worked there until 2017, 2018, and just learning like a ton because social media moves so quickly. So at first it was just Facebook and YouTube, and then Instagram came out and Twitter came out, all these things, right? So it was constant learning, and I liked that. I liked the challenge of it. But then I kind of started getting a little bored with the job. So I just was like, you know what? I'm telling all my friends what to do for their businesses, and I think I could actually probably make a go of this if I stepped out on my own. So at work, I was just getting a lot of no's for creative ideas than yeses, and that's just hard for me. I don't like working like that. Like, I like being creative. I like having say. So I just was like, you know what, let me try this. So I kind of dabbled. I did my job and then kind of side hustle. I created Purplebeat Media. And it got busy quickly. So 6 months later, I kind of had to choose, okay, what am I going to focus on? Should I stay at my current position, or should I try this Purplebeat Media thing? So I chose that just because it's fun. It's like creative. It's never the same thing, which I totally love. Once that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, I just gave up a steady paycheck. It was just like, put your head down and start working because this is intense. So I just picked up really quickly. It's been crazy, like year over year. I can't believe, honestly, how far I've come. I wish I did it sooner. So mainly I just help business owners get online. So whether it's small business owners, a lot of times they're like, listen, you do everything. Don't talk to me until you need a check. Basically, like, you create the content, you do the video, you do everything. I work with bigger businesses who want me to have more of a marketing plan. So it goes a little bit outside digital, or it's bigger brand building, it's video, and that's always really fun. So it's basically anything anybody needs, we can do.
Awesome stuff. And the one thing I've been curious about is the story behind the name. Why Purplebeat?
Purplebeat, because when I started, I understood SEO, which is if someone types you in Google, you need to be found. And I had no money for like a real website, and because I wasn't sure what was happening. So I was like, I need something that's not real. So like, not that I'm stuck on the bean idea. I don't even really like beans, but I couldn't do green bean because that's the thing. So I was just like, I need something. And then as I learned more about marketing, I laugh because it's like, And my whole thing is just move fast, make a decision, move fast. So I'm not stuck on my logo or my name. I was just like, I went to a networking meeting just on a whim. Someone I play soccer with said, oh, you want to do this business? Come to my meeting. So I went and everyone's like, what's your name? What's your card? What's your website? And I had nothing because it was just an idea. So I went home that day. I'm like, I need a website. I need a business card. I need a name. Let's go. So I just kind of like randomly chose this. And then funny enough, like Seth Godin and stuff are like, always put a color in your brand, always do this. And I'm like, hey, it's memorable. And so many people talk about it. It makes me laugh. I'm like, no, it was nothing. It was just, it was pure luck.
That's funny because I've always wondered too. So there you go.
Yeah, and I figured eventually I'd see it in the content, but I hadn't yet. So
because there's nothing behind it.
But it's making money.
It doesn't matter.
All right. Now, obviously, your life has been primarily, well, a big part of it is on social media. Yeah. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is just protecting children online. So I'm sure a lot of this is being a mother of three, but what is it that really stirred your interest in protecting children online?
Yeah, basically, honestly, when I talk to parents, a lot of people say, hey, my kid wants Snapchat. Is it safe? So this is not conversations I'm having online. These are face-to-face conversations. And my daughter is 12 and she this year said, hey, I want, they've always had phones, like our old phones, which we give them time to watch or play games. And she said, I want Snapchat, I want Instagram. And I was like, whoa, okay, I have to think about this. I can't give you an answer right now. And I'm online too. And some messages I get are horrendous. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're doing this to someone in their 30s? That's gross. And what are you going to be doing this to my kid when she gets Instagram? So it really pushed me. So it's from my own research because I was like, oh my gosh, my kids, obviously they're living in a digital age. It is what it is. They have access to things. Everyone seems to have access to them. And then just a lot of parents saying, I don't know what to do. What do I do here? I don't like it and I don't know what to do. So out of that came kind of a passion for this topic.
Awesome. Now, as a parent, I'd be interested to get your insights as well. What are some of the things that we should really be cognizant of when we're letting our kids delve into the online world?
There's a lot you need to pay attention to. So first of all, I just want to say we are the parents, so we actually get to set the rules. When it came to my kids when they were younger and I didn't really know too much about anything, it's just yeah, you can play on the phone for a little bit. And they played whatever their racing games or whatever they were playing. I realized if we cut it off at an hour, it was fine. We could say, okay, give us the phones. And then they would go play. If we waited more than an hour, it was a meltdown, crying, freaking out. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're addicted to this. This is crazy. Now we know there's a lot more information out there where it's saying, hey, you can be addicted to screen time. But at that time, I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this. So I just always say, pay attention to your kids' patterns because maybe they won't communicate with you properly, at least, but you'll be able to see you know what, something is up with my daughter. She's really withdrawn. She's moody. I'm not sure what's going on. I need to have a conversation with her. So I just say, pay attention to the cues and also just do the research yourself. I don't mind when people are like, hey, is Snapchat safe? But I'm like, don't ask me. Go Google it, man. There's a billion other experts who are better than me telling you, is it not, and how to make it safe. So there's tons of sites, mainly Snapchat seems to be top of mind, TikTok, Instagram, the things that the kids really like to use. And you can find lots of articles and resources telling you about how they can navigate it properly.
And I think the important thing too is when our kids come to us and ask us, oh, can I download Snapchat? You don't have to answer right there on the spot, right? You know what? Let me come back to this. I have to do my research. I have to see what this is all about, right? Because yeah, there are some parents who are on Snapchat, TikTok, but there are a lot who are not, right? So it's fine to say, let's just wait, let's just table it and let me do my research and come back, right?
Yeah. And we have one of our four will like to push when you don't give an answer. So I was like, okay, well, if you're forcing me, the answer is no.
Yeah.
if you want an answer, no, because I haven't researched it.
Yeah, that is literally the conversation I had with my daughter when TikTok came out. She's like, can I have TikTok? I'm like, oh, what's TikTok? I don't know. So I was like, I don't know. Let me think about it. And I didn't get a chance to look into it. And she's like, did you make a decision? Did you make a decision? I'm like, ask me again. And the decision's me and my friend. So just give me some time. I'm like, I'm only doing it for your protection. For sure. So yeah. And then guess what? I got TikTok because I'm like, oh, if you're on it, then I need to know it. And they'll always be smarter than us when it comes to anything techie. But it's one way I can figure out if TikTok's good is using it myself. So
no, I totally agree. And for Snapchat, even one of the things that I found, because I didn't like at the beginning where the message would erase right away.
Yeah.
right? Because I'm the parent who, and they know at the end of the day, I come in and, I want to see who you've chatted to, what you've said, right? So the nice thing is you can switch that. So like those conversations stay on.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure it's almost forever, right? But yeah, because that's the scary thing is if you have your child, doesn't matter what age, if they're talking and whatever they said is erased, right? Pretty much right after, then what? Especially if you have maybe a parent who comes to you later and is like, oh, did you know your child said this or sent this, right? How you've got nothing to go on. So it like those type of things, it is pretty scary to know that you could just spit something out in Snapchat world and it be gone like
Mhm.
right away.
Mhm.
Right. So yeah, definitely the research part.
Yeah, it's like the thing is, I think it's Paul Davis who says like it's from your emotion to your fingertips when you're online. And kids, it's just easier to be mean nowadays. Like when we were kids, you had to like stand in front of someone and say something really mean and look them in their eyes. And of course, there were always the kids that did that. But for the most part, we have a natural like empathetic state of being. And now you don't have to see how it hurts someone. You don't have to see tears well up. Like, back then it's like you say something mean and you see them kind of cry and it hurts your heart. Now you never see the repercussions. And then 30 other people might jump in on the same conversation. And it's just humiliating because it's out there for the world to see in some, like not Snapchat, that could be a one-to-one, but like an Instagram post or any type of post that's public, TikTok, whatever.
For sure. And then I find it takes that empathy away, right? So kids now, it's like they don't have that. They say something, they don't even think about it because they don't get to see what the other person is feeling.
Yeah, there is a major lack of empathy, even actually as adults. It's called it's something like empathy fatigue, because we're scrolling on Facebook and it's like, hey, my sister and her kids, picture of an ice cream cone, starving person got murdered last night, picture of ice cream, picture of a kitty cat. And it's like just too much that we are actually becoming numb to certain things, even as adults, because it's just like we're exposed to way more than I personally think we could handle, period. Whereas like before on Saturday, you would see at like 12 o'clock, the World Vision commercial, and it would kind of break your heart and stay with you because it was emotional. And then it's a 2-minute video or 30-second commercial or 1-minute commercial, and then you move on. Now we're just flicking every 3 seconds. We're seeing like rockets over here, murder over here, cats and dogs. Like it's just too much information that it's actually numbing our empathy.
That makes sense.
Right. And even if empathy is not coming into play, like if you thinking back to when I was a kid, if somebody said something or, did something to make you feel bad, a lot of times, especially myself being a male, it turned into fisticuffs. So you don't have that element built in either. So, you get to avoid all of that. You can just kind of, I guess the term that we use is trolls, but you can say or do whatever you want. There's not really any physical consequences or, the emotional consequences too, like you had mentioned.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's no accountability really. Like you're not worried about, oh yeah, then tomorrow at the food court, or like it's just like you say it, it's out there and nothing gets done.
Yeah, like at least in person, I always had to assess, okay, this person, if this gets physical, how am I going to make out here? And that, that's going to help your decision making a little bit in those situations. You don't have that doing things online now.
No. And cyberbullying, it's everywhere. It's just part of life. No matter what, you're going to be cyberbullied at some point. And it's bad just because it is everywhere. So we used to be able to go home, and home was our safe space. So yeah, we were at school for 6 or 7 hours. The kids were brutal. But as soon as we crossed that threshold, it was done. Now it's like you cross the threshold, you go to your room, open your phone, and it's non-stop. So it's just, we're living in a different world.
So going to safety, when parents are doing their research, what are some of the things you would recommend they look for when deciding whether to open up the Instagram, Snapchat accounts for the kids?
Yeah, so there are a lot of documentaries. I watched one recently. It was called Childhood 2.0, The Dangers of Social Media, or something along those lines. But the main title was Childhood 2.0. And it was talking to parents and just like, oh yeah, when we were young, we had to come in when the streetlights came on. We had to do this, and then talking to their kids, their teenage kids, and just kind of showing the difference of how we lived and how they're living. And a lot of experts on that specific documentary, I'm like, wow, I want to look you up separately and start following you online because this is amazing. There's books. Last year I bought Tech Wise Family from, the author was Andy Crouch. Yeah, there's a ton of, on Netflix, there's that new, what's it called? Social Dilemma.
Your sister told me about it. Actually, she watched it and she said, you need to watch this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember the title of it.
Yeah, so that a lot of people were talking about that at the time because it's so interesting to me. I jumped on that bandwagon. But there's a lot of resources at our fingertips. And then, of course, just Google. If you're worried about sexting, you Google that. If you're worried about cyberbullying, it's there. And even now, like the FBI and the police officers basically have information about what we're talking about, because online safety is just something that now is a major concern.
Mm-hmm.
And I just did double check and confirm. So it is called Social Dilemma.
So yeah, definitely watch it. That is a good one. It just kind of shows how we even can be manipulated by algorithm and just that 24-hour news cycle and what it could do to us. But the Childhood 2.0 was great because it literally talked about every topic you would want to talk about. The rise of depression and anxiety tied to screen time, cyberbullying, sextortion, whatever, just like every topic you could kind of be worried about. It's like, it makes you a little anxious, but it's good because I don't want to be the parent that's like, not my kid, not my kid's friend. No, you don't know my kid, because it's like, no, my kid's normal, just like every other kid. And they could be like perpetrators or they could be victims. And we need to have these conversations. But to have those conversations, you need to be educated.
No, that's so true. And I think right now, just with everybody home and stuff like that, the school day is not as long as it normally would be. So they have even more time, where before it was really that after school till bedtime, potentially, that you would be online. Now it's like pretty much all day, because they're even using it when they're in, on screen with their class, right? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just definitely being on top of it because of the amount of time and the fact that, parents are in the home right now, but the majority of the time they're working. So they literally do not have eyes on them, right?
And that's me too. Like, even with this, like my kids are at the park. I said, they said, when we come home, can we watch or can we go on the phones? I'm like, you can until I'm done. Just be quiet, okay? Because I'm doing the podcast. Like, it's a natural babysitter. So, but
sure.
we do have to, and it's like, now it's easier. The sun's out, it's beautiful. But when it was the winter shutdown, that was a different story. It was boring. And I still have to get things done. My husband still has to get things done. So it's like the easy babysitter. But the thing is, like, what are we putting in our kids' hands, and is that ease worth the mental health implications that could potentially come down the road?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's funny enough, I was listening to a podcast this morning. It was speaking with Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman, and he's a use of force expert, but he delved into this talk about online and video games, and he was part of a program, a Christian program designed for kids, specifically teens. But he said, like, now with the program, they've had to kind of shift. And the first 2 days is just really detox, getting the kids used to not being on devices and being online. He said it's almost like withdrawal the first 2 days. And then for the rest of the time, they're able to actually enjoy the outdoor activities.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting thing.
I have found that with my kids, like when they start getting too addicted, I'm like, okay, you know what? Next week, we're going to do a screen-free, week. And the first 2 days are usually honestly miserable because they're like, why? And it almost makes you want to give in. And then it gets nice, but it's 2 days of pain. Now it's harder because now that's my daughter's like social tie. So I'm like, Can we say, like, I don't want her to be now alone for a week. Like, it's more complicated now. But when they were just playing video games, it was easy but hard. But we saw a major attitude difference. And then we'd say, hey, you guys, we're noticing an attitude change with you. Soon we're going to, if you can't get this under control. And they can't because their brains aren't developed, right? Like sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I just scrolled for 45 minutes. Why? So, and I'm an adult who has responsibilities and like the function to be able to say like, this is not good. Whereas they can be on YouTube Kids and there's no pause button. It's just like, boom, video, you're done. Another video, another video, another video. And they don't have the brain function to be like, I need to stop this. It's been too long. It's up to us as parents. And I read it interesting today, a fact that said basically how the parents use their technology is the biggest predicator on how the kids will use it. So the average stat says adults are on, and this is an American stat, but the average American is on their phones 11 hours a day. Well, then why would we expect our kids to be on their phones like less than an hour or here and there? They're gonna model what they see. So
for sure. I remember the first time our oldest was using his probably phone or, Switch for, the morning, right? And he comes out and he's like, oh my goodness, I feel so tired and lazy.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? I'm glad you noticed it, because obviously it's an ongoing conversation. But I said, you know where that's coming from? That's because your brain hasn't done much over the last couple of hours, few hours. You physically haven't done much, and your body is used to going and being busy, right? So now do you understand where I'm coming from, right? So I was glad he was able to pick that up.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like that, because it's not helping you. It's not helping you physically. So yeah, you have your time and then you keep going. And if you need to come back, like you want to come back, have some downtime in the afternoon, sure, right? But it's interesting that all the physical aspect of being on, your tablet, your device, whatever it is, over time.
Oh, for sure. Actually, another thing I learned recently was on that Childhood 2.0 documentary. I can't remember I think it was a woman, and she said the two things they've been noticing in the ER is a rise in anxiety and depression among teenagers, and also obesity, because my boys they can lay down. Like if I didn't stop them, I literally think they could go 24 hours. Actually, one time, my middle son had to have surgery, like dental surgery. He was getting a tooth pulled. So they said he can't eat. And the appointment was at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, oh my gosh, he's only 7. Like, how am I going to not let him eat? Like, this is craziness. We went in the morning, and once he kind of started getting like hungry, I was like, here's the phone. You can play until your appointment. And it was hours. And he didn't feel hunger. As soon as I was like, here's the phone, we're going to get going. He's like, oh, I'm hungry. And I was like, wow, that's terrifying that you literally put away a need such as eating because you were like so engulfed in this game. But so
yeah, you see it with the hardcore gamers. So like some of them, they come up with ways to avoid having to go to the washroom, and there's been times where they've just actually died in that seat. But it's interesting. The other thing too that I learned as well is, we as adults, it's similar, but even more so for a child, like you mentioned, while their brain's still developing. But when they see something, when they experience something online, like their brain accepts that as a real experience. So I'm sure that's contributing to what we're seeing in terms of the rise in anxiety and depression. So when they're playing these games for hours and killing people, even like when you look at like Call of Duty, or not to call it any specific game, but these games where it's really focused on kind of these destructive behaviors, like they're internalizing that.
Yeah, that's for sure. And the stats reflect that. So when it comes to social media and mental health, once phones, like 2007, the iPhone was invented, and by 2010, 2011, it was pretty much in the majority of people's hands, like the smartphone, I should say, not just the iPhone. And they have like maps of when like basically your baseline of anxiety, depression. And then once that was in people's hands, it just rose like crazy. And they're saying we can contribute this to the access of just the phone, basically. So we do have to be careful because it can change our brain behavior. And again, this is new to us because we didn't have that. Like we were already fully formed adults when we started dealing with this. And our kids, they're in the experimental age. So maybe when we're like 75, they're going to be like, oh, the parents shouldn't have done that. Like kind of how when we were kids, like our parents smoked even though they were pregnant. And it's like, we're like, Mom, obviously you shouldn't smoke when oh my gosh, you used to drink while you're pregnant. That's crazy. That's what our grandkids are going to say to us. You just let your 4-year-old play on your phone. So like, that's honestly where I think it's going to go, but we'll see. So we just don't have the information yet, but the information we have, it's not good. So, and this is what, like, when I kind of get like pressured by my kids, I'm like, no, man, the stats, like just say no. So, and it's not perfect, obviously, all the time.
Yeah. And going back to the whole COVID thing, socially, they're not seeing their friends, right? And what's the way to do it? All of a sudden, the messenger. And so we have 1 girl, 3 boys, right? The 2 older boys that would classify in this situation. But the first lockdown, she's a little bit more social. She was on that Facebook Messenger thing, was ringing off the hook, right? Video chats with her friends, this, that, and the next thing. And she's 9. So, that's like to the extent for her. But the boys, I found, well, especially our oldest, it wasn't as much, because for him, like, not necessarily do I want to look at somebody and chat, like that's not really his thing, right? But then instead it's, looking at YouTube videos or different things like that. So it's like, am I a better parent because I'm letting my daughter, chat, how she would hang out with a friend, but then a not so good parent because I'm letting my son just scroll and see what's going on. So it's not as productive. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
but
he was more on like Messenger and he was more communicating with people through text rather than getting on like a FaceTime or something like that with them.
But it's just different the way they use it, right?
Yeah, the same thing over here. Like my daughter will FaceTime and text her friends a lot. My son will play a game and be talking to them.
Yes.
But they're like, it's time to give it up. He's like, well, she's on the phone still. I'm like, yeah, but it's different. So I'm like, I don't know, man, just give me a break. We're trying to.
I know. Yeah, we definitely over the last year and a bit, we're thrown into a whole different situation when it comes to devices and everything else, right? So
yeah,
definitely tricky.
It's tricky, all right. Yeah, for sure.
Now, in terms of just some of the things that kids are facing online, we talked about some of it already, but what are some of the other things that we need to be aware of as parents that, could potentially be harmful to our children?
I think the biggest one that I don't want to say more concerned, but very concerning to me is sexting. 1 out of 2 high school girls will send a sext in high school. Like 50% of the population will have pictures of themselves floating out there. That's so alarming to me. When I heard that stat, my stomach dropped, and I'm pretty sure that's a Canadian stat. So that's concerning. When I heard that, I was like, not my daughter, of course, but I'm sure all the parents are saying not their daughter. So I had to just say to my kid, listen, we need to talk about this. It's so awkward. I don't want to talk about this. You don't want to talk about this, but it's happening. And from that comes a whole plethora of problems. One is sextortion. So it's like, hey, I already have this picture. If you don't send me more, I'm going to whatever. Or if you don't give me money, I'm going to release it. There was a situation in London, Ontario that happened within the last year. There's a situation in Cambridge, Ontario that happened in the last year. And these are 13, 14-year-old girls. They're not 40-year-old women, 50-year-old women, although I've had friends it happen to, honestly. So this is a conversation we need to have with our kids. Why, once it's out there forever. You'll never get it back. There are stories online. I saw actually a little Facebook clip of a woman whose some video went out of her, and she's like, she spends her life trying to pull it back in, but she's like, every time I delete it, it gets uploaded like 10 more times. So she'll never get it back. And she's just constantly a victim because of that. So these are conversations we really need to have with our kids because it's terrifying.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You basically have to treat anything that's going on that device, whether it's a photo, whether it's a video you make, you have to be okay with it actually just being online forever, because it's a possibility, even if someone were to hack into your device and be able to access that stuff. So you have to kind of have that mindset when you're doing it. I remember I interviewed somebody a long time ago for a security guard position. And one of the things that he said that kind of stuck out to me was, every interaction I have, I treat it as if somebody's going to put it on YouTube. And, this was like back in 2009. But that's really the trend that you're seeing today. All these interactions with law enforcement, it gets put up online so quickly. So.
Yeah. And they just trade it. Like I said to my daughter, listen, you send the picture, you think maybe you're sending it to your boyfriend who you love. You're not. I'm sorry. They're going to trade it like they do hockey cards or Pokemon cards or whatever. And everyone's going to see it. And you'll know I'm telling the truth, because you will see somebody in high school. So it's just, these are the ongoing conversations we need to have with our kids. So it's not like a one and done. When I read things online, especially when they're local, there was a kid actually in Ontario where she started like a relationship with another teenager, but of course it was like an old perverted man. And she left the house and they had to find her. Like the cops had to get involved, obviously. And then they found these chat messages and he was saying, send me pictures. And then the parents saw all the pictures of him online and they were horrified. They didn't see it coming. And now their kid's missing. When I see those articles, I'm like, hey, look at you guys, this is real. Of course, it's like age appropriate. I don't tell my youngest necessarily, but I say it's been a conversation in our life for a long time. It's like, yeah, you can send that silly picture if you want, but you're not getting it back. And it's just, so you don't want to look stupid online? Well, and then it's like, now, okay, you're going to high school. I don't want to be one of those naive parents. Listen, you send a picture of your body, everyone's going to see it, period. You'll never get it back. It can surface on your wedding day. It can surface at your funeral. Like it could surface when you have kids, like it's there forever. So I'm just tying in the real life experiences and saying, oh, it happened to this girl, happened to this girl. And I kind of also in a weird way want to normalize it. So if it did happen, if something does happen, if she gets a picture, she's going to be like, Mom, oh my gosh, this happened. Because a lot of times they think it's only them. They're the only ones in the world. It's like, you're not. Look around, man. It's everyone. So that's the other reason I kind of point out these. One, to say, listen, adults can outsmart kids any day of the week. It will happen. Number two, It happened to this girl around town. It happened to this girl around town. And then number 3, if it happens to you, there are steps we as adults can take. You need to be open with it.
And that's another great point too, just the predatory nature of some of these people online, because again, it's just a tool and it's going to be controlled by your intentions. And there was somebody did a documentary. I'll have to find it and put it in the show notes, but it was basically a woman in her 30s who was, she looked young, and she was able, just with some touch-ups to her images, she actually just posed on as a young girl online. And they were just testing it to see how quickly people would reach out to her, like these adult men. And it was crazy. Like if you actually watch it, like she put something up, and then within a few minutes she had a message, she had a DM already from from an older male. And she's built a program around this where they try to catch these people. But it's just one of those things. It's astonishing how much success she has leading these people in, and how many of them there are out there. So it's just another thing to be cognizant of as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw that video. It's I think it's called like Mom Poses as an 11-year-old Girl or something like that. So you can just YouTube it. That was terrifying. Like when I saw that, it was too graphic. I really wanted to show it to my daughter, but it was too graphic, so I didn't. But I just said, oh my goodness, like, it's just gross. And that's why I'm like, parents, don't just give. I heard a really good thing. It was a detective. I was at a conference for social media and all that. And then for some reason, they had this detective, and I was like, this is interesting. So actually, that's probably when I started getting really interested in this kind of thing. Anyway, he said, you guys, your kids are your kids. Would you go to like the big mall, drop off your 6-year-old and say, we'll come get you in a few hours? No. And he's like, that's what you're doing when you're giving them all access online, but you're giving them access and you're giving people access to them. So check the privacy settings. And that's why, like, when my daughter, I didn't end up giving her Instagram. I'm like, you're too young at this point. I know there are privacy settings where you can limit the access, but I'm just like, I don't feel comfortable with that. You can have the Snapchat, you can have TikTok, but it's just a no. And we can revisit the conversation next year. And I'm the parent, so guess what? It's a no. I bought the phone. You're using my internet. You live under my roof. Like, we have the power.
I could go on and on. But why the answer is no. It's funny because I think the first time, like, I had a conversation with my oldest just in regards to this, some of the stuff and about pictures and what you do and don't do. When I was going through to my head before I sat down and was talking to him, I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm having this conversation. But the reality is, if you're not willing to have that conversation, the stuff, if you think, I guess, if you think this is too much for, their ears to hear, then what they're about to see is even more. So if you can't even have a conversation about, posting pictures and just like all that kind of stuff, then maybe it's a hold off, because you don't want to be naive to the fact that, oh, they're going to scroll through that TikTok video, right? Like, oh, they're not going to acknowledge that comment or that video. The reality is they're going to be seeing it. So you have to be in a position where you have to be comfortable knowing that they're going to run up against some different things online.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think when I talk to parents and they really believe like they know more than their kids, or they're, not their kid, I'm just like, dude, you're just in denial, and denial is a real thing, but that's not what's best for your kids. So I always say to my, like, again, people who talk to me, I'm like, I've been having these conversations, age appropriate, like, obviously, since they've been starting to use the phone. I've talked about, hey, screen time can be addictive. It can be addictive for me. It can be addictive to you. And then it moved to these conversations. Once social media became a part of her life, before that even happened, I started saying, hey, listen, here's the things that could happen. We need to be open. So now the conversations, like at first they were really, really awkward, like to be like, hey, did you know that men want to see pictures of your body? That's not a conversation I want to have with an 11-year-old, but it's just real life. So, and it was so awkward. We're kind of like not looking at each other, but now it's a lot more common when I'm like, oh my goodness, look what happened to this kid in Toronto. And it's not like this weird conversation because we've been having it frequently enough. So it's really awkward at first, but I would tell all parents, just have the conversation, because they're going to see worse than anything we're ever going to tell them. So acknowledge that and then try and get on top of it.
Yeah. So I guess just to kind of summarize, so obviously as a parent, you want to make sure that you're doing your research, don't be naive, understand the threats that are out there. Anything else on this topic that we should kind of, keep at the forefront of our mind?
Yeah. So I always tell people all the apps, especially Snapchat, they have this map feature. So you can literally see where people are. I think that's the worst feature I've ever heard of in my life. It's not on my daughter's phone, but when I look at her phone, and by the way, we all have the right to look at our kids' phones. So I would say know the passwords, get access, and also make that normal, because you don't want that conversation to come up in the middle of like a tense discussion. So like if it's already normal, then it's fine. Take away that, because for two reasons. One, I don't think it's good for people to know exactly where your kid is at all times. Number two, when it comes to cyberbullying, my daughter had an instance where she had to block 2 girls from her class. They were brutal. And I was like, man, do I have to get the cops involved? Like, it was serious. She didn't have the map, thankfully, but I'm like, they can just, her friend did. And I'm like, so they can just follow you guys and harass you as you're like walking the streets, basically. So they know where you are and they can gang up on you. It's sickening. So, and that's just 12-year-old girls, let alone predators. So for sure, take the location services off. Tell your kids never to tell where they live, what school they go to, like this private information, because it's really easy for predators to do. Like, I think it was last month, someone came, and I want to say it was in the Brantford area. They traveled from like the States up, and they thankfully were stopped, but they had the kid's address. They were going to pick them up under the guise of like friendship. And those parents would never have seen that kid again. Like, sorry, once you cross the border, good luck. So privacy is really important. All the apps pretty much open up everything. So you have to manually go in and say, no, don't show my location. Don't do this, don't do that. So just keep that on the forefront. Privacy is really important. There's no privacy online. What you post is there forever. And we're seeing now things happen where it's like some dumb kids tweeted something when they're 14, and at 25, they're losing their job because of it. And so again, we were so stupid as teenagers. Thank God nothing is documented. Now I'm like, kids, you got to worry about that, because like we didn't have phones on our cameras. It's like we had actual physical pictures if we chose to bring a camera with us. Nothing's private, but just encourage them and just teach them privacy is really, really important.
And one other thing I would add to that. So on that Snapchat, if you don't change the settings, well, the picture settings, right? Because once a picture's open, it says open, right? And I know some people may think, oh, well, it's gone. Like they saw it, so it's gone. You can't click on it. But like there's screenshotting, there's so many other things, right? So it's letting them know that even though it's been opened and you can't click on it, it could be still there.
Yeah,
pretty much, right?
I don't know if this is the case because I don't use Snapchat, but what I'm told is that if somebody does screenshot it, because that's not the intent of it's supposed to be temporary, that you get a notification that somebody screenshotted it.
Yeah, you do, but who cares if they already have it?
Yeah, they have it. It's too late.
That notification, your stomach's dropped because it's too late. But there are ways to save photos, and there are like other apps you can do to subvert the privacy settings, like so you can't see that someone took a screenshot. You know, there's just so much out there. So it's just like, don't do it, period, because like, yeah, we might not know how to take a screenshot without letting other people know, but other people certainly do. So,
well, even right here, like I have 2 phones. I could easily take a picture of the other phone, right? And there you go.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. So yeah, that's what I would say. Basically, parents, be parents. You know, we set the rules, we set the tone, and the main thing is the communication, and then just also educate yourself. Watch the documentaries; they're horrible. I mean, sometimes it keeps me awake at night, but I need to know these things because I don't want to walk into just a horrible situation and be like, I just didn't think she would do it, or I'm just so shocked. So we really need to stay on top of the trends. And if your kid has Snapchat, you get Snapchat. If they have TikTok, you get TikTok. If they have the new one, you get the new one. So that's just parenting 101 for me. And I'm just still working through it. I'm not an expert by any means. I just want to say that. My kids are only 12, but it's just something I'm learning. And the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, man, people don't get it. We need to be talking about this.
Yeah. No, it's a great point because the information is difficult to watch, and like you said, it may keep you up at night, but you know, what do you want to keep you up at night? Would you rather being disturbed by what's out there or something actually happening to one of your kids?
For sure.
Well, thanks for this conversation. It was really good and really helpful, and I hope it just opened up a little, sparked a little attention, interest for parents to like even delve in more and do some more research. So, but before it's funny because we talked about this and, your main job, we talked about, at the beginning, but we would love to end by you just letting us know what you're working on with Purple Bean and where everybody can find you.
You can find me on YouTube, which is just at Sherri Barna, which is my name. Otherwise, I'm Purplebeat Media on all the other apps, basically. And what I've been up to, just doing a lot of video work right now. And that I love video work. It's my favorite. And being on podcasts, doing webinars, which is another part of my job, which I really, really love. And if I could do anything, it would be more of this, less of the hands-on stuff. So that's basically it. Lots of webinars. Everyone's glued to their screens, as we know. And that's just given me a lot of opportunity to teach. Sometimes it's just how businesses need to use social. Sometimes it's specific, like here's how to do Instagram, here's what a hashtag is. And it's been really, really fun. So I've been meeting a lot of interesting people online, which I love.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sherri. Again, just appreciate the time and the information.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.